Let's start with the Beethoven Fifth Symphony, second movement. Since it's a variation form, it's a good idea to have a very clear concept of the shape of a melody, since it comes back several times. And to do that, we really need to have a good grasp of the functional harmony underlying this melody. The tune, of course, is in A-flat major. The first change in harmony is in the second full bar. It goes to the subdominant, D-flat major, and then it goes via a half diminished seventh to a surprise modulation to C major. So far we have a pattern of light, heavy bars, in other words. Light, heavy on the subdominant, light on the half diminished seventh, very heavy on the surprise C major. Here we have a sequence, a two-part sequence of dominant sevenths resolving. The first one is F7 to B flat minor. The second one is D flat to A flat, and then he repeats that like that. So whenever you have a dominant seventh resolving to a tonic, stress the dominant. Go away from the resolution to the tonic. This is the exception because Beethoven writes a subito forte. Be careful with this last phrase, that you play the half position extension with a high wrist and your first finger pointing straight back to your ear. Don't slant your hand and collapse your wrist. I hear a lot of cellists who play like that end up playing sharp in this passage because they can't extend far enough. You can reach much farther with your hand in this position. Okay, so putting it all together. Where we have running 30-second notes has precisely the same harmonic underpinnings as at the beginning of the movement. So we should be projecting the same kind of shape throughout the variation. Same pattern of light and heavy bars. Okay, next we have the slow movement of the Brahms Second Symphony. The important thing here is sostenuto, making sure that we phrase from the beginnings of the lines, even though they seem to be metrically shifted one beat backwards. Brahms does that a lot. So even though the first note is a pickup, it really needs to be the strongest, most stressed note of the line at the beginning. And then also it's important to phrase through the rests later in the excerpt. Let's discuss that a little bit. I'm talking about this part. You need to use your bow speed to project through the rest so that the line doesn't completely fall down during the rest. Okay, so let's put that together. it's worth noting that a lot of cellists have difficulty going up to this high B natural. Don't forget, this is very important, the high B is not the goal note of the phrase. The goal note is the D sharp and the E natural that come after it. So you need to use a reduction in bow speed when you shift up to the B to make sure that it's integrated smoothly into the phrase and that it does not stick out. Watch my bow speed as I play that phrase. And then over to the D string for a color change here in this sequence. Next we have Debussy La Mer, the famous four-part cello passage. We're just going to talk about the top line. It's important to have a good grasp of the metrics of this passage. Even though it's in 12/8, all beats are not equal. In the first half, yadam ba-da-da-da-da-dum ba-dum. Again, you have a pattern of heavy and light beats. It's important to project that through your playing. Keeping the strokes light, supple, so that it has a dancing, lilting character, but also being careful to be very selective about which of those 4 beats in the bar we stress and which ones we tend to lighten up on. Don Juan is a piece we see come up a lot on orchestra lists. I think it's primarily important to remember that the fast notes are not that fast. They're very playable. Don't suffer from what we call black note disease. When you see all the beams of the 16th notes, there's a tendency to panic a little bit, but you actually have a lot of time to play these 16th notes melodically. And don't forget to give them a phrase. The opening sequence should start not on the open G, but here on the C string, up bow, so that the bow rotations on the string crossings are always in the helpful direction, the clockwise direction. Okay, that's I think the most supple fingering for the beginning of Don Juan. In the second theme, again, make sure that the phrase doesn't die on the long note, which happens to be on a down bow. And it's very common to hear string players sort of die on their down bows. Make sure you keep the intensity, and the translation of that is make sure you maintain the bow speed on those. So here's another example of where a Gajic upbeat should be stressed and the downbeat should not be. But then the long note is a stressed note and it continues to be sustained all the way to the E natural there. So putting it together, so you have an arch form. Light, heavier, getting heavier, heaviest here, and then lightening up as you go away from the peak. So that's the Don Juan excerpt, and that's all I have time for today, but I hope those are some useful pro tips, and get practicing. Good luck.